Good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman. With me today is Jon Lambert. He is the CEO of Canon. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you very much, Justine. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. And it's many times we have a lot of founders on and people that are building better for you food businesses. We also like to focus on those resources available to founders and people building the businesses because oftentimes it's really the network and the community that they have around them to support their ventures. So hence why we'd like to talk about Canon, and maybe if you would introduce yourself and what Canon is.
Absolutely. So the Canon was created essentially and fundamentally to support the startup and entrepreneurial community in Houston, Texas. There were limited resources back in 2017, 2018. Lots of people were picking up and leaving and feeling like they needed to go to Austin or elsewhere to start their business. And we didn't agree with that. All the resources are here. And so we essentially mobilized the Canon and the community here to get that whole process started.
Awesome. Thank you. So when I think of a community to this, it's sort of reminiscent and it reminds me of many co-working spaces and the community and the content that they provide. How are you guys different?
So we didn't start with the idea of physical space.
Mhm.
It was really how do we mobilize people together it didn't really matter what the physical space was at that point in time. Just get people together to start conversations around, what are the synergies? What opportunity do we have? What do people need, frankly?
Mhm.
And how do we meet those needs? One of the things that happened out of that process was as that community grew, physical space was one of the primary needs. And so we started down the path of creating space. We now have 9 physical locations in the Houston market that meet the needs of all the different kind of boroughs, if you will, across Houston. And really the differentiation is we're not about the physical space. We're about the community in that space and meeting the needs of that community on a daily basis.
That's great. And I like the idea that you built this community prior to creating a space so that you had this foundation of resources and community that were looking to share their like-minded visions
Yes.
and share vetted resources.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, the pandemic was actually it validated who we were as an organization. As you remember when the pandemic hit, my peers in the pure co-working space emptied out, right? And people weren't comfortable using space and everybody was working from home. Our community didn't go anywhere. So we kind of bottomed out at 70%. And the message was there's more to this than you providing me an office space.
right.
We spent,
I heard that you
yeah,
maintain 70% of membership. So
yes,
talk to me, what do you attribute that to? Because
it's
COVID was a
really,
really challenging time. There was a lot
absolutely.
going on.
Absolutely. And at that point in time, we kind of, sat back and scratched our head and said, okay, so how's this going to go? We weren't sure, but, the message was really, if you look back at what we spent our time doing and pre-pandemic, during pandemic and post-pandemic is we proactively go to and work with the companies within our community to figure out what we can do to help them. So
Mhm.
the pandemic, virtually every day during that period of time, we would sit down with an individual company and get in a room with legal counsel and an accountant and a finance person and potentially a minister, depending on how serious the problem was, and just talk through, hey, what do we do with this? How do we help you pivot or partner or do something different to survive? And that's when you ask about differentiation, that is really what differentiates us. When people come to our space, we kind of warn them, hey, if you want to be left alone, there's probably better places to go office because our team is going to pursue you. And if you don't have a need today, you're going to have a need tomorrow or the next day. And we're going to be there asking you kind of how can we help with that and what kind of resources can we help provide?
So I want to just dig into something that you said because I'm curious. You know,
Mhm.
I think as a small business, everyone needs to surround themselves with those resources, legal, accounting, strategic thinkers, but you
Yeah.
also mentioned minister. So
Hmm.
did I hear that right? Okay. So is
I
that
did.
specific? Okay. Is that specific to a niche? Or is that all around? What role does that minister play?
My approach to building and growing community really starts with, as sappy as it sounds to some people, loving people first, right? So if your spirit of support and engagement is around, truly caring for other people, then that transcends the business piece of things, right? And when you're talking about the evolution of a startup and growing a startup organization, the challenges that come with that, a lot of times we get focused on business plans and raising funds, and those things are clearly important. But if you lose sight of you, the person, the founder, the person, and that transcends into wellness and kind of how you take care of yourself and where your priorities are, you can run the best business in the world. But if you as an individual fail, the entire thing falls to pieces. And so what we try to do is address every element of the organizations and provide support at every level. And that, and a lot of times, turns into conversations that don't have anything to do with the business and have more to do with, hey, I have other challenges that are stopping me from growing my business. Can you help me with those things? And so we provide whatever resource we can on that front as well.
Wonderful. I mean, I think one of the things that we try to do as a platform is provide these vetted resources for people to be inspired by and make more informed choices. And
Mm-hmm.
that's many times for the companies. But we also do like to focus on the founders because sometimes the founders forget about their needs, how they can
Absolutely.
take care of themselves. So I
Yes.
think that really ties in quite well there.
Yeah,
And I'd be
we
curious.
do a thing. It's really neat. We do a thing called Founder Confessions, and it's a monthly event. I'm blessed to have a member on my staff that's also a certified counselor, who's kind of our MC for that event. And essentially, what we do is we bring in founders and entrepreneurs that have had a journey and have stories to tell, and really get down to the nitty gritty around, okay, what's this really about? Let's not mince words around, I don't want the Facebook version of your world. I want the real story about, what you've been through. And so, the community has really gravitated toward, wow, there are people out there that are going through the same kind of things that I'm going through, and it's okay to talk about it, right? It's
Mhm.
not, this is not I don't have to kind of shield this to feel like, for people to think that I'm bigger or stronger than I am. I can actually talk about these things and help resolve them.
Wow. So with all these resources, are these people part of your membership or are they part of your staff and on staff there at will to, to just be available when anybody should need them?
And that's a fantastic question, and I think it's another differentiation point in my answer. So, obviously, uh, we're kind of a startup as well, and so as much as I would love to have a team of 1,000 that can meet those needs, what we've really tapped into is the true definition and meaning of community. And so, instead of the canon having to employ an entire staff of counselors and service providers and those kinds of things, what we've done is said, hey, if we're a true community, then everybody has an opportunity to contribute. And
Hmm.
so we have now 60 advisors at all levels. I tell everyone, if you ask me a question and needed an expert, I've got at least one and probably two advisors in our advisor community that are ready to support you in answering questions that you have in that regard. We have partners that are service providers that are on a regular basis part of the conversation around, we need help with this. Can you provide education on the front end? Ultimately, can you provide services to support these things? And so we've really tapped into this concept of, when you're part of a community, yes, we understand there will be needs that we can help satisfy, but you also have an opportunity to give back. And so we ask people to just contribute at that level anywhere where they have the opportunity. And a lot of that, the delivery of that, comes down to kind of our methodology in terms of digital and physical space management. How do we create that collision opportunity? And so if you walk through any one of our spaces, it's really designed to encourage people to connect with each other and have conversations.
So if I was a part of your community, right? And I'm looking for somebody, am I going to somebody specific to try to get a recommendation? Am I going online? Is there a list, a glossary of people, how does one connect?
Okay, so within our digital community platform, it is essentially a repository of everyone in the community. So we allow people to, some people from a personality perspective are very self-service driven. So you can go into that directory, you can search that directory for other founders or companies of those other founders that align with what you're looking for. You can reach out as part of the community to one of my folks who can help you get connected to the folks you're looking for. We're just rolling out a matching. It's kind of almost a dating type functionality. If I have a specific need, we'll actually match you with the appropriate advisor, so you don't have to actually go out and look for that. In terms of shortening the period of time it takes for you to find what you're looking for, and we're getting ready to roll out new features within the platform that when you join, it's going to go out and use AI to go say, hey, who are the top 5 people in the community that you need to speak to based on who you are, your profile, so that you're not fishing around trying to find the right thing. But we can do the work on the front end to quickly get you connected to people of interest to you within the community.
That's amazing. So it sounds like it's a very people-focused business.
It
How
absolutely is.
and
That's the
how are
center of our
you
universe is the people.
it's the people. So, but everybody could be in a different niche or area. So how do you
Mm-hmm.
manage that network for the clients that you have?
Yeah, no, it's a challenge, and we want to be everything to everyone, and ultimately maybe we will be, but we really focus in on as we evolve new community, what I will call nodes. Our bigger picture vision is as our footprint expands. We quickly found out that the challenge that we were solving for was not a Houston challenge. It's not a Texas challenge; it's a global challenge, right? The needs
Mhm.
everywhere, so the real opportunity is how do we draw people into one community, create nodes that are localized that allow people to interact physically and digitally, but then connect those nodes to other nodes, so that if there's if there's somebody that's sitting in pick a city, Atlanta, Georgia, who's
Mhm.
working on an entrepreneurial initiative or project, and has no visibility into Houston, Texas, but via our platform can connect to those folks. We can actually remove the borders from that innovation process and create an environment that doesn't exist anywhere else. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is kind of systematically go through and understand what the community needs the most, and then make our investments in how do we deliver value so that that community is getting more from what we provide.
So is this a membership that anybody can join? Do you have to be invited? Do you need to be sponsored?
No, we are wide anybody. So we have a freemium layer membership that anybody can. If you go through our website, you can join forever for free, and that will give you kind of exposure, access to the community. You'll see what's going on and what some of the opportunities are. And then we are a for-profit business, and we don't apologize for that because we're helping a whole bunch of other for-profit businesses. It really puts the onus on us. For-profit businesses don't survive unless they're delivering value. So it's what wakes me up every morning going, what new value can we bring to this community so that they keep coming back and it keeps growing?
I'm sorry, when you say Accelerator Services, what comes to mind is like Techstars and these other kinds of accelerators. How do you compare to them and what do you offer that's different?
Yeah, so we have not. Accelerators are for us are a resource for the community that we support. So we have not gone out and said, well, we're going to develop one of those and compete with the Techstars or a generator or the other, a lot of the other plug and play others that are operating those programs out there. What we have done is looked at kind of the life cycle of the organization of a new organization, and an accelerator is going to deliver value in a finite period, critical value, but there's needs before, there are needs during, and there are needs after. And so what we try to do is help organizations understand, what am I going to get out of an accelerator program, potentially help them qualify to do what they need to do to get into that program, help them while they're in there, and then when they graduate from the accelerator program, what's next. That's often the big challenge of, okay, I just finished the accelerator. Now what? There's plenty more to do in that regard. So we look at those as partnership opportunities in terms of aligning with, and that's value add to the community. And like I said, I was trying to say earlier, from my perspective, all of this is about bringing value to that community. The community comes first, and so there's there could be 50 more organizations like mine out there, and we would still not be delivering to the demand in the marketplace. And
Right.
so it's really all about how can we come together, align, and make sure we're doing the right thing for the folks that are out there trying to build their businesses.
Thank you for that. Are there any examples that you can give us of individuals that have joined the canon, leveraged the resources, and had an exponential, growth or built something because of the community? Maybe you could share one or two of those.
There's an organization called Corva that has been part of, back in the very early days in 2017 of the Canon, was part of what we called the waiting room, which was the one nondescript one-story building kind of next door where the whole thing started, where everything was kind of scrappy, and there may have been a stray cockroach here and there, but we survived and worked together. Corva started in that environment as a handful of folks, and as we grew into our own physical space, their business took off. They're in what I would say the kind of the oil and gas, energy, data and analytics space. So very specialized kind of data management, and then even technology management that fits inside of there for the oil industry. And so now they actually are still on our property, have their own 35,000 square foot space, are a global company, have, I think, close to 500, between 500 and 600 employees, last number I heard, and have just had tremendous success.
So my question is, do you need to be a Texas business?
Oh,
Because
absolutely not. No,
you could be from all over. What percentage of your community is from Texas?
right now, probably 98%. So that's kind of where we cut our teeth. We've expanded from a digital perspective in Texas. Saying that, we have opportunities on an expansion from a physical hub perspective in Huntsville, Alabama, in Atlanta. We're working on projects now, and so our goal is to take kind of what we're doing into the markets that want and need us the most.
So if we could just go back for a minute to raising funds, because I know that this is, a really big challenge for so many people. It's their first time doing it, or they're just intimidated by it. I know that you're doing this right now. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you found that you've made initially that you've learned from to help you move forward in this?
Yeah, it's being prepared to tell your story and understanding the period of time at which you have to hook the conversation, right? So you hear a lot about elevator pitch and those kinds of things, and it's very true that you we all have a very limited time with potential investors to generate enough interest for them to put more coins in the meter and say, okay, she's got a little bit more time. And so what happens is the companies, a lot of earlier stage startups are so focused on their product and their perspective of their product, they don't get their head turned around to just my product is not enough of a story for an investor. I have to tell the story of how my product is going to meet a need in the marketplace, and how big is that marketplace, and then how am I going to get to that marketplace, and who my competition are. And so really it's just honing in on being able to tell your own story.
Mm-hmm.
And there's organizations, early stage organizations, don't spend enough time doing that. We just as an aside, we had every twice a year we hosted a large event with Dell, and last week was their pitch showcase, and they had 6 companies that pitched it as part of that showcase here at our facility in Houston, and that was ultimately my message back to them was nobody else is going to tell your story. You need to tell your story. And they had the opportunity. In this example, it was a 3-minute pitch, and my message to them was if you're not reciting that 3-minute pitch to yourself in your phone on a daily basis, you're not investing the time that is necessary to prepare you for the opportunity when you're standing in front of a potential investor. And so it's really about that comfort level with understanding what that story needs to be to hook the conversation, and then being really, really good at telling that story.
Awesome. I think that's a great tip for those in this process. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I'm curious, I know you worked before at KPMG, but have you been an entrepreneur? Have you started your own business in the past?
It's interesting, and this is a conversation I have a lot with. We do a lot of entrepreneurial education, so we're investing at all levels of academia, from universities all the way down to third graders, around what entrepreneurship is, what role does it play, what the opportunities are, and I always tell those groups I'm not the visionary entrepreneur. I'm not the dreamer that all of a sudden comes up with this great idea and say, "Hey, this is what we're going to do." I'm the guy that comes along, the visionary entrepreneur, and says, "Okay, here's how we're actually going to do this." And both of those are entrepreneurial roles. Everybody
Right.
gets this, there's this frustration around, "Wait a minute, I don't have any good ideas." Well, find somebody with a good idea and help them execute it. You're an entrepreneur as you do that. So that's the role that I've played in probably 5, 6 different startup organizations that have, fortunately had the opportunity to grow to very large organizations and be acquired by other organizations. I actually joined KPMG through acquisition of a startup that we started in 2003. That acquisition was 2011, so a 9-year kind of growth period of a company from zero to about 500 people globally, $125 million a year entity that was acquired and became part of a large global, multinational partnership that KPMG is. So I've really had the opportunity to see kind of entrepreneurship at all different levels, and then on the corporate venture side, I kind of flipped sides of the table, right? So
Mhm.
in that scenario, I had the opportunity to go out and help organizations that we had acquired assimilate into large corporates. And large corporate organizations don't have an appreciation for how quickly you can kill a startup if you don't treat them the right way.
Yeah, I think, and I would also say that, with your experience as an entrepreneur, not being that visionary, but being that person that helps take that vision, and makes it possible for that to come to fruition and run with
Mm-hmm.
it. I think that that also talks to how people can look at looking for a co-founder.
Absolutely. Yes, no doubt. Yeah, there's a lot of great ideas have died on the vine because there's not an ability, that individual on their own doesn't have the ability to execute. And it really comes down to that execution piece. And a lot of times the idea through the execution phase is actually improved and perfected as part of that process. And so, yeah, for us, the 3 pillars are, in terms of support, are funding, as we've already talked about, um, sales and business development. How do you actually sell this product? And in the middle one, we kind of bundle under talent. And talent starts with what's the right team to actually take this idea forward. And that starts with the co founder. So you're absolutely right.
So I'm curious because you get people, it sounds, at all different levels, from moms that have been laid off or quit to, people that are become unicorns. Have you worked with organizations, or do you have organizations within your community looking to go public?
The, a majority, so the answer is yes. We've had companies that have matured to the level where they're looking for, and I'll quantify that as an exit, right? So whether
Okay,
that's a public offering or an acquisition,
right.
obviously the market conditions have kind of created challenges for public offerings.
Hmm.
A lot of that's dictated by how, what the market's looking for in that regard. But yes, we have had companies that have matured to that point and are either currently evaluating or have evaluated a public offering as an exit plan, or next phase plan, if you will. So
Is that also part of your infrastructure to help them with that exit, or with that, the idea of becoming part of a larger entity and going public?
Yeah. So the Accelerator program that I mentioned is through a business partnership with an organization called Next Stage Trajectory. It's a what I would call a later stage accelerator, and their entire focus is for supporting companies that have reached a certain threshold of revenue. So these aren't new companies; they've got $2 to $3 million a year in annual revenue. Potentially, they've stalled a little bit, and their founder group has a vision for, hey, we want to grow this significantly so that we can look for an exit opportunity. Their accelerator program is a very clear and concise 48-month program that takes those companies through that on an active support basis. So it's not just a, hey, here's a methodology, we're going to spend 3 weeks with you and good luck. It's we're going to stay with you through that entire period and help you not only raise the additional funds that you need, but help you go to market and sell to increase that revenue base, to increase your valuation, and then ultimately identify where are exit possibilities and who are possible partners that would be interested in acquiring the business and helping with that process. And then also, as an extension, again, back to the personal element, somebody that's going through that exit process, there's a personal component from a financial perspective on doing that the right way. A
Mhm.
lot of folks that have gone through that have lost a lot of money with not understanding how to manage through that process. So we're also managing that at the founder level, except now it's not founder as an entry point, it's founder at the exit point. So yeah, equally as important.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's a whole conversation in of itself.
Yeah, it really
Um,
is. It really
because
is.
I think that there's so much to that, right? When somebody wants to go public or take on larger institutional investors or get acquired by another company, there's always the concern about how will my mission and my vision be maintained?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Every
it's
founder's worst nightmare, right?
yeah,
It's a double-edged sword. Here's $30 billion, but
yeah.
we're going to change the mission.
Yes. No, you're exactly right. And that you have at least have the opportunity to think through and understand and and preferably have acceptance around where that goes versus not understanding what you're getting yourself into. And the same's true of your piece of the pie as it relates to the financial returns, right?
Right.
We talk about that from the very beginning of there's don't give away your equity. This is a process that you need to understand all the way through, and so we try to help all of our founders and new businesses understand here's how this process is going to work, and don't compromise yourself unknowingly at any point in that process.
Awesome. Thank you. So I just want to go back as we wrap this all up because I know that you offer membership to everyone all over. And we did talk about accountants and we talked about lawyers, but some of these things are very state specific, right? Like you need to have an attorney in California or Delaware. So I just wanted to, drill down on that a little bit so that our listeners know, are these resources, are they global resources so that
Yes.
regardless of what state you're in, you can access support and help?
Yes, absolutely. We may not have the matrix all the way filled out, but I'll use the legal example. Our partnership is with an organization called Dickinson Wright on the legal front. And from a services perspective, we selected them because of their focus on the entrepreneurial space. Also, their focus on the international space. One of the things we haven't talked about that we're working through is creating an international soft landing for startups and small businesses. So businesses that have been created in Asia and Europe that want to come into the U.S. market. There are resources for large organizations to make that leap. There aren't really resources for small organizations. And Houston, just as its nature across the board, is a very compelling place to come. And so Dickinson Wright has expertise in that space as well. And so, yes, that what we attempt to do. And if we have a member that comes in that has that specific need, then it's our job really to go out there and help them find that resource versus them having to go do it on their own with the goal of if we bring that resource in for one, we can then leverage it for the entire community.
Wonderful. Well, there's so much more we can talk about, and I really appreciate this because I think that so often we are focused on the product or the brand and their mission to build a better for you business, to create greater access to healthy foods. And here we have the opportunity to really support the founders through your community on a
Yes.
local
Yeah.
and on a global level, giving them the resources, the vetted resources in particular, that they need to be able to move forward. So,
Yes.
Jon, thank you so much for joining me today. And before we go, before we wrap this up, can you just tell us what can we expect to see with the growth of the Canon in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I alluded to it a little bit earlier. We've got, our big picture vision is that there is what a lot of what I'll call white space, meaning there are pockets of innovation and startup community in different places. All of them virtually are kind of inward facing and focused. So Silicon Valley, a lot of Silicon Valley is about Silicon Valley, and New York's a great place, and there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity going on there. But it's really about New York, and Boston similar, and Chicago, and other places around the world. Beyond those cities, there is demand and opportunity. It's just that the resources haven't reached them yet. And so our goal is, however we can, whether it's physical, virtual, or a combination of both, try to fill up those white spaces to create a much larger community that kind of transcends the geography, if you will. And so, as I mentioned, from a physical hub perspective, we want to be at least in 5 new markets by the end of next year. From a digital community perspective, where we're working with economic development organizations and that kind of thing, we're not limited from a geography perspective, and so we are having conversations, and I think our brand will show up in support of initiatives across the country as it relates to entrepreneurial support. That's a differentiator for us. Is it's not about planting our flag and brand recognition. Really, it's about getting support to the community. And so we're okay with powered by the Canon extension to a local initiative if that brings more folks to the table and gets more folks support.
Awesome. Jon, thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank our listeners and viewers for tuning in today. And these episodes are available on iTunes and Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Each week, new episodes come out on Tuesday mornings. So thanks for tuning in.